Now that game produced somewhere between 53 to 56 million at market. Um, so imagine what that is, the first $8 million gets flushed, but that's still, 45, $50 million to be receiving royalties by a company. The company, which was a small company at the time, dozen, 20 people, something like that. Um, we got a big fat zero. And the reason was because a sentence was missing from that contract. And so coming just a couple of years before uh, the recession, you can imagine the impact on not just the business, but the families that um, should have been taken care of by that royalty for some time.
Michael Woolf is the founder of Boon Legal, a business law firm in Nashville built on a premise most attorneys would consider heresy: no hourly billing. No 6-minute increments, no charging clients for phone calls or emails. Michael didn't take the conventional path to law. He spent 2 decades making video games and films and went back to law school at 43 after watching a single missing sentence in a contract cost his company tens of millions of dollars in royalties from a game that generated over $50 million at market. That experience shaped everything about how he built Boon Legal. Every attorney at the firm has business or executive level experience, and the entire culture is oriented around relationships over transactions. In this conversation, he tells a story of evaluating an extraordinary AI platform for due diligence at a major law firm that never adopted it because they couldn't figure out how to bill for it. He talks about the technophobia in that courtroom, the absurdity of measuring attorney value by hours billed, and why he thinks AI is simply a new pencil, a tool that lets his team think more and do less of the mechanical work that should have never been the point. Let's dive in. Hi, welcome back to the Main Street AI Podcast. This is Stephen with Satori Coach IO, and today I'm joined by Michael Woolf of Boon Legal. Thanks for joining, Michael.
Well, good morning. I really appreciate being here, Stephen.
Excellent. So please go ahead, jump in and give us a high-level overview of what you do with the firm.
Sure. So, Boon Legal is a business firm. We're a firm of entrepreneurs that support other entrepreneurs. Um, it started from a real simple idea of how do we make this better. I was not in the legal field uh, as a sort of straight through undergrad kind of attorney. I had a completely different career for a couple decades making games and films, and had a heck of a time doing that. But found myself as I grew in my career and in business, I found myself having more and more ongoing relationships with my attorneys, and they weren't always the best. There were uh, things that came up over time that really put a damper on that relationship. So when I was at one point offered a partnership in the shop I was working at, I looked at my two partners and I said, I'm really grateful and I'm really humbled, and there's no way I'm doing this if one of us doesn't get some sort of legal education, because we had just gone and seen some really, really bad stuff happen in the industry. And I said, we just doubled our team size. We've got 70 families relying on us to do our jobs right. So we can't be making cheap mistakes. So a couple of years later, I ended up back back in school, which was another humbling experience, graduating law school as a first year at 45. And instead of getting right back into what I was wanting to do, I ended up getting poached by a giant law firm. And I thought, okay, let me go learn about what it actually is to practice this for a little bit. Um, and I found that the practice of law was frankly, it was more restricting than even being a consumer of law.
Mm.
Um, so I left to change how it was that we were doing this, because it struck me at one point. I don't know why it took that long, but it struck me at one point that all I've ever really done is service-based work, and this is just another service. But unfortunately, the legal industry is not exactly at the top of its game in terms of being, cutting edge. So there were a lot of things that I thought just needed to change in terms of not just the delivery of services, but just the way we treat people, internally and externally.
Could you talk a little bit more about that that concept of your model like this, like where you really feel you've kind of changed and innovated that model?
Yeah, well, the legal industry about 130 years ago, roughly, um, there was a gentleman stood up at an ABA conference, and he said, the only thing that matters for attorneys is our time, and so you need to be billing by the hour. And that whole hourly billing model started. Uh, it's now gotten to it went from the sublime to the ridiculous, as they say. We went to a 6-minute billing model, so um, it literally is broken down by the tenth of the hour. Well, that level of absurdity um, it's just a terrible way to work, just as a provider. Because imagine trying to jot down and map out every 6 minutes of your day.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. Number one. Number two is uh, hourly billing, as we now see it crumbling around us with the larger introduction of AI. It's just not sustainable as a business model, and of course, it's not scalable because there's only so many minutes in a day for every person. So that becomes a real issue. Uh, and so we looked at it and we said, let's just take away the barriers, right? Barriers to relationships. I'll give you an example. So I was working at a company in the game industry. We produced a product that was about a $500,000 development deal. And the contract that was written for that was dependent on a 2-game deal. And it had, at the time, it was very, very standard, which was, the publishing company came in, they pay for the COGS, and then they'd expect a set ROI. And so it was 100% go to COGS, revenue goes to COGS. Then it was 80% going towards that set ROI, and then it split 80% to the developer, with a royalty. Now that game produced somewhere between 53 to 56 million at market. Um, so imagine what that is, the first $8 million gets flushed, but that's still, 45, $50 million to be receiving royalties by a company. The company, which was a small company at the time, dozen, 20 people, something like that. Um, we got a big fat zero. And the reason was because a sentence was missing from that contract. And so coming just a couple of years before uh, the recession, you can imagine the impact on not just the business, but the families that should have been taken care of by that royalty for some time. And it just went nowhere. Now that resonated across the entire industry. It was a real visible thing at the time. Um, and so, that leaves a mark. Um, and I can only surmise, because I wasn't involved in the actual negotiations of that, but I can only surmise it happened because either there was some arrogance or ignorance along the way. I understand that the attorney that worked on that was well qualified as an entertainment law attorney, but wasn't really a video game uh, attorney. He was more TV film. Now, I don't know if that entered into it or not. Again, I wasn't there. I can only surmise, but I have to say that uh, I see a lot of that with, hey, I'm going to go start a company. I'll ask my family friend who's a bankruptcy attorney, hey, can you help me set up an LLC? Or, my friend's wife does divorces, or whatever those things are. Um, and in fact, there's far more subtlety to it than that. And so, um, folks don't often get the support they really need. Now, beyond that, I, as a business person, going to an attorney that I'm paying every 6 minutes of their time, it's real hard to develop a real relationship there. Um, while you're paying for that relationship, right? It's like, I'm glad your kids are fine. Can we get back to this?
Right.
so, uh, so I thought that's a real problem, because if I'm to protect my client's business, I damn well need to know the nuances of that business. They're not paying me for that. So that leads to problems. So we just said, the heck with it. Let's just get rid of the hourly billing model altogether. Just chuck it. We don't want to charge people to have a phone call, to send an email. I'm not interested in doing that because you can't develop relationships that way. So I think that's the biggest part of what we do is from my spot at the top all the way down, it's a constant thing of, you know what, I don't care about transactions. I'm going to go against the grain on that all the time. They're good. We need them. It's the fuel that keeps the vehicle running. But our job here is not to. I mean, none of the folks that work here are here to make money. They're here to build relationships.
That's fantastic. And you had mentioned that something that has come up on the podcast a number of times here is that not in every single domain, but in a lot of domains, the hourly model is starting to, as you put it, crumble in the age of AI. So that's a good pivot point into
Sure.
our central theme here around emerging tech. So what are you seeing trending right now with AI, its impact on the field, and impact also on your firm?
Yeah. I think the biggest impact, oddly, is not how it's being used, but frankly, in the technophobia, right? I'm sure you've read the news about
Oh yeah.
people using AI for legal and getting their getting the bar card handed to them. We'll go with that. And I've been talked about in court in front of a judge from an opposing party. Go, oh, they used AI for this, and my response to the judge is, yeah, I did, and so did the person who figured out that I used AI with this. But of course, I'm using AI because I use it for grammar checking. I use it for making sure that, I mean, there's tools that we use with AI. We've been using with AI for years. Of course, we're using it. That doesn't mean, however, that what I'm saying isn't still using my experience, education, what have you, as an attorney, right? And we can argue. I said this to the judge in a case. I said we can argue, judge, all day long about whether or not you agree with my interpretation of a case. That's fair game. But whether or not I had a law school student doing research for me, or whether I had an AI do research for me, at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to check those cases, make sure it's right, etc. So that's what we're seeing on that side, a lot of technophobia. A lot of folks that I went to law school, graduated 2016. I think the average age in my class was about 30, and I think the majority of my class didn't know that you could do tables of authorities in Word, or page number incorrect, automatically, things like that. And we're not even using the tools we have. Forget the new stuff.
Right.
So I think a lot of what I'm seeing is AI for very specific uses, with a lot of trying to figure out, particularly these larger firms, larger companies that have been doing this for 50 or 100 years, that they're just sort of stuck in their ways. And if you think about the trajectory of the average attorney, it's undergrad to law school to internship to practice. And the entire time, they're told the only thing that matters is how many hours you bill, which is absurd as a measure of anything, frankly, especially given the fact that the majority of those folks that are coming in, they don't get to choose their clients. They don't get to choose how many hours they work. I mean, it just becomes an absurd competition for something silly that really has no bearing on whether they're good or. Now, in terms of what AI is bringing in, that's good stuff. There's a lot of great things. I remember a platform that I did an eval on when I was at the big firm. that was an extraordinary platform for one purpose, and it was a machine learning platform specifically designed for due diligence review, which it was extraordinarily good at. And in fact, the firm went out and licensed it and what have you. But they never used it while I was there, um, because they said we don't know how to charge for it. And
Yeah.
and that's kind of the big problem is we're not even understanding why are you trying to charge for something that 3 years everybody's going to have to use, or you're going to get brought up on malpractice for not using the tools you should and bilking your clients. I mean, it's a trade-off. Where I think that most of the things that I've seen have been fairly focused on task-based work. I need something to help with research, or I need something to help with writing, or I need something to help with contract clauses, or specific things, and they're all very good at what they do, but they're certainly not the promise of AI that is being touted. And I think that's going to be a long time coming because, frankly, I think everybody's looking at the problem backwards.
Yes, I think that's a great point. And just in my experience, you gestured towards this earlier, but the legal domain, the legal industry is one of the, like, along with kind of the traditional model of law, the traditional model of medicine, in terms of going to see doctors and how that works. You see areas like radiology and things like that that they're very progressive with AI, but when you just look at the model, it is stuck in its ways, and so adoption of new technological paradigms tends to be quite slow. So
Right.
One of the things that we're seeing, a lot is some use of tools, like you mentioned, task-based, but
hmm
not really embracing a full implementation of, like, could we actually streamline everything we're doing,
Yeah.
and make sure that everybody's actually, using these tools and using them in a cohesive way. So that's a great point.
And that's something we're trying to do here, by the way.
Yeah, excellent. Um, so you seem very positive about it. What would you say you think is on the horizon that you're most excited about?
For me, the promise of AI that I really appreciate is that we can offload some of the doing, right? Some of the finger work, and focus more on the head and heart work, right?
Yes.
People don't come to an attorney, and I think this is probably true in most industries, frankly. But you don't come to an attorney to write documents. I mean, sure, that's a deliverable, but that's not what you're coming for. I worked for a real smart gentleman who taught sales. He was exceptional at it, and he made the comment one time: nobody goes to a restaurant to eat. Or sorry, excuse me. Let me rephrase that. He said nobody goes to a restaurant for food.
Hmm.
That's what he said, right? He goes, you go to a restaurant not for food. If you want food, go to the grocery store, make some food, right? It's cheaper, it's faster, arguably it's healthier in most cases, etc. But that's not why we go to a restaurant. We go to a restaurant to be served. We go to a restaurant not to clean up dishes. We go to a restaurant not to have to clean up the kitchen. We go to a restaurant because we don't have time to do both parts of it, right? The meal is the deliverable, but it's not the reason for going.
Right.
And I think the same holds true in most cases. People don't come to a lawyer for documents. They come to a lawyer for what's here and what's here, right? They want us first to be able to, from a strictly academic point of view, an experiential point of view, to be able to go, okay, help me think through the things I don't yet understand or I haven't experienced or what have you. That's the small part, actually. The big part is also what Lawrence once said, which was, a person would rather you heard their story than grant their request. There's a reason they call us counselor from time to time. And a lot of what I'm seeing, especially from business clients, which is the vast majority of people we work with, um, they want to have a level of confidence that they've thought through things correctly. They're they're not they're not worried about a mistake here or there. They're not worried about, oh, well, this thing's going to, someday if this thing goes right. They're thinking those things. They're certainly risk managing, or risk assessing, but they're not necessarily looking for the work. They're looking for, help me make sure I'm not making stupid mistakes. Help me to make sure that I'm putting my business on the right track so that 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now, I'm not going to look back and go, what the hell did I do? Uh, because that's the part, running a business. I'm sure you've talked about this before. I'm sure you're aware of it. It can be very lonely and very scary to do what we do. Um, and I don't believe for an instant, by the way, that entrepreneurs are risk takers. I think that's wrong. I think entrepreneurs are risk assessors. Um, Risk takers don't make it to entrepreneurship. It's just, yeah. Now, lawyers and actuaries and people like that, we're risk mitigators, right? There's a difference. But the question is really, how much risk can one absorb? If is that risk worth the reward and all the rest of those things that go with it? But I think people are really looking for, um, particularly those that are having to make the larger decisions. How do I make sure I'm making a decision that when it does get made, it's not going to take down a company and all of the people that work here and all of the work that's been put in and all the money that, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a lot more to it than the material, but uh, they want confidence. They want um, to be able to just move things forward in a way that feels like, okay, I'm not being dumb.
Yeah. That's a great segue point to my next question as I kind of pivot into your business a little bit more.
Mhm.
What would you say that you guys do exceptionally well that sets you apart? Obviously, you've got this model, but just generally speaking, that sets you apart from others that might be in your same legal domain.
Um, well, putting in the disclaimer that we're no better than anybody else, which we don't claim to be. I'll give you the honest answer here. We listen differently.
Mm.
That's number one. Number two, we're not we're not looking to sell product. We're not looking to be a commodity. We're looking to build relationships, and that's all we look to do. Um, and the rest of it happens.
Mhm.
So I think that differentiates us. The fact that we start with the entrepreneur in mind, not the legal in mind, right?
Mhm.
We like to say that we're a firm of entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. Everybody that's here that's practicing has done some business of their own, or been involved in the executive level of a business. So everybody's keenly aware of the decisions that need to be made, at the top levels. Um, like I said this, I think last week in one of our weekly meetings, my job isn't to do the work. My job isn't to make sure you do the work and check behind you. My job as the CEO, as the leader here, is to make hard decisions that nobody else can make,
Mhm.
and to try to talk about what we do and share what we do and build uh, build some visibility, in the world that we serve. But that really trickles down, right? Um, I coach on a regular basis. We do it daily, about the values that we hold true. We do it weekly, talking about, um, character and integrity, uh, part of the values, but really digging into that, talking about what is sales, in terms of the fact that everybody sells. So what does that really mean? And looking at sales as education, not as order taking. Um, Looking at it from the point of view of saying, hey, you know what? How do we build trust? How do we make sure that uh, that from the moment we pick up the phone to talk to a prospective client, that we're doing everything we can, and not as a check the box thing, but really doing it. Really showing care to our clients, really listening to what they have to say, giving them the opportunity to get through the first pass and then start digging further to get to the actual thing. You know, what I like to say after 25 or 30 years or whatever of running service companies is that and it's really no different from when I was making games, by the way, or film. Our job is not to know what to do, right? Our job is to know how to figure out what to do, right? Which means that we have to understand what it is the client really needs. What do they really want? So that comes down to another job. Our job is not to listen to what our clients ask for and give it to them, because as famously been put by so many folks, Steve Jobs and others before, Henry Ford's famous one, right? If I gave people what they wanted, they'd have a faster horse. You know, our job is to listen to what people are asking for and then to be able to give them what they actually want. And those are vastly different because people don't know. And you and I are just as guilty of this as everybody else. We don't know what we want. We know what we want the outcome to be of what we want, right? So we have to be able to listen further. So I think that's a massive difference from other places where if you're not focused on those communication skills, you're going to lose that, right? I mean, anybody can register somebody for an LLC. Um, but does that help? I mean, quite honestly, I tell my clients all the time, attorneys really like to put themselves up on pedestals as if we have some sort of special something. And the reality is it ain't that damn hard. Right? There are a lot of other things that we can do that are way harder than this. The difficulty, if any, in practicing law is that there's a ton of it. But that's it. It's volume. It's not difficulty. And so I don't. I mean, I tell the truth to people. Hey, you don't need us to do this thing. Right. I'm happy to talk people out of spending money with me because I would hope that people would do the same. Right. We want to treat people the way we want to be treated. If I don't need something, I don't want my electrician telling me I need it and trying to sell it to me. Right. No, this is not your problem. Just do this and you're fine. Okay, good. So if that's a differentiator, I think that's sad, but that's.
Yeah. Well, no, it does sound like you guys spend a lot of time and energy on touch points that maybe just go assumed, but maybe not trained and not systemic within a firm. So
Sure.
that's a great answer. And where would you say that you are right now in terms of growth with the business, and where are you looking to get to in, say, the next 12 months?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Like everybody else, our growth plans were, uh, you know, who said it was MacArthur or somebody that said, your plan's great until the first shot's fired. uh, I wanted to be a little farther along. Uh, in retrospect, I would have loved to have been farther along. At the end of the day, I've been looking at what I'm doing is a little bit slower, but a little bit on purpose because I knew from the start that I was making changes in an industry that doesn't like change.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to be respectful of the fact that people need to catch up a little bit. So to a certain extent, that means you need to carry people with education for some time. It's maybe a little bit longer of a sales cycle. From a clearly strategic point of view, um, we had I put together a whole tech stack, uh, a tool set from the start that after about 5 years and I was ready to start bringing more people in, it became very clear very quickly that it was an unsustainable stack to use as we grew, that I needed to actually stop and set the system up to be able to support the onboard.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually scaled down, and we went into what ended up being about a year and a half or so of a full replacement of all of our systems, basically getting it down to about two or three main tools. Um, and once we had that, we then developed an onboarding that it's about a week and a half, 2 week onboarding process. And we take folks first through the culture aspect,
Mm-hmm.
and then we take them through, okay, and here's what we do, right? Um, for folks that have come in under that, especially ones, well, let me say before and after. Before we did that, we had a lot of trouble with finding folks that could make the changeover from the hourly to
Yes.
not. It was exceedingly difficult, and more often than not, they would self-select out.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously we said that can't keep happening because we'll never get anywhere. So we switched over. Well, we went through this thing of trying to think about not just culture in terms of the way that we refer to each other and that we work here, because most firms are an eat what you kill kind of model, right? And we do a share what you kill model, and literally it is as collaborative as we can make it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very, very different that way, in a lot of respects than a lot of other firms. But it allows us to do things like make sure that everything gets two sets of eyes before it leaves, because we want to do better every time, right? Um, so so we've got that onboarding now. That's been great, and people are coming through and they're sticking, because at first they don't understand. Like, I'm not doing anything. Don't you want me to type something up? And we're like, no, it's cool. We got videos and books. uh, but we try to um, reframe the whole hourly billing model and reset a mental model towards, hey, it's okay. It's not about how fast you can go. It's about how well you can do and how much you can build these relationships so that you understand when you get to doing stuff what to do. Because quite honestly, a lot of times clients come in, hey, I got an issue coming up. They'll come talk to us and we'll spend an hour or two on the phone, or on a video call talking. And then they're like, okay, great. And that's it. That's the whole thing. And to our clients, they talk to us about this regularly. That's the value, right? They don't want to go suing people. They want to understand what their options are, right? They don't want to, oh, let's go sue. Yeah, that doesn't help anybody. Not to mention 85% of cases are going to end before we're done. So anyway, we like to focus on those things. Now that we've got that in place, now we're full growth. So I moved myself completely out of the production pipeline, um, and I'm working on two things. One is we're continuing to build this business, continuing to expand and help people, through Boon Legal. And then I'm also working on trying to show other folks how they can make this change, because whether they realize it or not yet, or want to admit it or not yet, it's going to happen. And so, we figured out a model that works. It's not the only model for certain, but it's one that's been working for us. And if we can show other people how to do that, that's terrific. So that's happening. Also happening in the background is Boon Engine, which is our consulting firm. So the entire core idea of Boon Legal was to be part of a larger, uh, interoperated, the typical 5x7 kind of uh, professional services that every business is going to need. So whether it's your HR, your accounting, bookkeeping, financing, investments, what have you, all of those things being offered under a single hub. And so we're building that out. We've already got our marketing group. We've got our investment arm coming in. We've got bookkeepers and accountants already starting to come in. So we're going to be announcing and pushing through on that. And probably within the next 12 months, you'll see that sort of emerging more.
That's exciting. Um, so you've had a great journey so far. Very interesting trajectory that you mentioned for yourself personally, and I know you said everybody else in the firm is, executive level business experience. Um, so, with all that said, and now with the initiatives you're working on right now, if you were to wave a magic wand, hypothetically, right, you could fix anything that's maybe friction point, slowing you down, holding you back. What would that be right now?
Uh, Time to actually implement the things, to build the tool sets, to build the educational material. I mean, there's a lot to do
Hmm.
in terms of trying. For example, and I think you probably can relate to this. When you try to reach out a hand to educate, to share your thoughts on what have you, th- those things are those things are important to do, but take time to do, right?
Hmm.
Podcasting, it doesn't happen in the hour or half hour, or whatever, however long your show is, right? It's not going to happen in real time. It's going to take hours to get to that,
Right.
right? Um, a court case, whether you're doing a negotiation or whether you're in court, it's going to be a slog. It takes time to get there. So if I had rather than a magic wand, if I go to the Harry Potter universe, I'd rather have a time turner. um, but the reality is that the the AI tools, in fact, not the AI, any of the tools that we have, those are the magic wands, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think if we, it's funny because when we talk about AI here, uh, I talk about it as a new pencil. That's it. It's not going to replace anybody here. It's not going to keep us from hiring staff that are support staff. It's not going to do that stuff. It's going to allow us to think more and do less, right?
Hmm.
So that's a magic wand to me. The more that we can take advantage of the technology and tool sets that we have or that we build to get us there, the better. But yeah, it's just a time issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's even more relevant when you're moving away from hourly billing models. um,
Yeah,
and
well, yes, absolutely. And
yeah.
and not just in terms of the billing, by the way, or the margins, but in terms of the fact that uh, it's by doing it more efficiently
Hmm.
that we can, our margins could be infinite, right?
Right. Yes.
So that's good. I'm not scared of that.
Absolutely. Um, so, Michael, where I like to kind of wrap after we've talked about business and tech is always on the human.
Sure.
Much to your point about this is relationships. So, what would you say is your personal why for what gets you up, motivated to do what you do every day?
So yeah, I explored that for a long time to try to discover what it really was, and it boils down to a very simple thing. Um, what I do to inspire and engage so that we can create together. I'm less concerned about what we create and more interested in just creating things that are good for our communities, our families, brothers and sisters, right and left. The world itself has always been in a state of needing repair.
Mm,
So things that we can do that can inspire and engage others to create things to make for a better world to live in, I'm all for it.
Very well said. How can people best contact you to find out about your services?
Oh, sure. Well, they can go to www.boonlegal.com, and that's Boon, no E, legal.com. Um, or they can just pick up the phone, give us a call. We're at 615-378-8880, or hello at Boon Legal.
Fantastic. Excellent. And that'll go in the description, of course,
Appreciate it.
when we publish this. So, great insights today. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me. It's been
It's a
fun.
pleasure.